of silent prayer. Shall we stand, please? Thank you very much. Please remain standing as we administer the oath. So, lay your right hand.
I, Chief Cyril A. Allen, do solemnly swear that my testimony that I have come to give to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Liberia is the truth and nothing but the whole truth. So help me God.
Yes. Good morning.
Good morning.
We want to, on behalf of the Commission, welcome you to these public sessions of the TRC and extend to you our appreciation for your acceptance of our invitation to come and share these moments with the Commission and the people of Liberia. You are aware that the TRC grew out of the Accra Peace Agreement and has become a forum that should afford us Liberians to understand our past, to understand our problems, to understand the root causes of our problems, so that a foundation for lasting peace and for lasting peace and reconciliation can be laid based upon our lessons learned and experiences of the past. What many people don't know is that prior to the 90s, you have been active and a key player in our political life. And based upon that, your experiences are what you intend to share with us today, which leads from the early 70s up to the 1980 coup, and then leading up to the periods of the 90s, and then up to the several peace agreements you helped to broker as a representative or member of the National Patriotic Front of Liberia. So it was against this background and your rich experience and public life, we thought to invite you to come at this forum to join us in this discourse. So on behalf of the Commission, I want to say thanks for coming. You are most welcome again.
Thank you very much. I'm privileged also and pleased to be invited by the Commission. It is my duty as a Liberian citizen to represent a broad section of the Liberian people and to share my experiences and my knowledge of the situation prevailing with the crisis over the last 20 to 25 years in our country.
Okay, I would like to use this time to introduce commissioners, and then you move into your full presentation. Commissioner Sheikh Kafuma Konen sits at the right end of the panel. Next to him is Commissioner Per Brown-Bull. Next to her is Commissioner Umu Sila, Commissioner John Stewart, and then Commissioner Gerald Coleman. I'm Jerome Fwedier. Again, it is our pleasure. We say you are welcome. It's all yours.
Thank you very much. Before I commence, I would like to also ask all of us to rise and observe a moment of silence for the death of Madam Kebe Freeman, former chairlady of the Marketing Association, matron of the Mendement Society, and a very prominent Liberian citizen in our country. Please join me in that. Thank you. May her soul rest in peace, and may the souls of all the faithful departed through the mercy of God, rest in perfect peace. My fellow citizens, I am very pleased to be here today, and though we are quite busy, but it is important that we respond to such an important invitation, not because of ourselves, but because we represent a broad spectrum of the Liberian people. We come here to speak for the hundreds of thousands of Liberians that have the knowledge of the crisis, that have solutions to the problems, but are unable to be here, maybe because of their status or for other reasons. I acknowledge the letter that was written by the TRC, and I'd like to look at certain aspects of that letter. The letter reads, in view of your knowledge of this period, we are honored to invite you to participate and make a presentation during the public hearing on the contemporary history of the conflict, 1979 to 2003, at the Centennial Pavilion from August 4th to August 30th. We should be pleased if your presentation would also include your role, your personal experiences during this period, your perspective on the creation of a peaceful society, and recommendations you may want the TRC to consider regarding national reconciliation, repatriation, prosecution, amnesty, and security. That is the aspect, the part of your letter that interests me, and that is the part of the letter I wish to address today. In my response to you, I said, and I read, reference is being made to the caption wherein you invited me to participate in an interview with your inquiry unit and to explain my role and experience during the Liberian civil crisis. As you may know, I played a very major and active roles in the Liberian Revolution from 1970, and especially so during the period herein referred to. My experience during the crisis would highlight issues such as direct involvement of international groups, countries, concessions, companies, and individuals in stimulating the crisis. The genesis of the activities of MOJA, PAL, youth movement, University Student Council, workers' unions, and other pressure groups and individuals in encouraging riots, strikes, civil commotion, vandalism, malicious mischief, looting, and which eventually resulted in a coup d'etat. B, the murder of the elected President William Aratoba, Samuel Doe, and the murder of prominent citizens such as Jackson F. Doe, David Dwyer, David Tue, Stephen Yekesin, and Samuel Doki. D, moral and financial and physical support given by many past and present government officials in fueling the crisis. With the permission of the inquiry unit, I would also discuss issues relative to the People's Redemption Council initial meeting and actions following the murder of William Aratoba. Civilians who suggested and planned the murder of 13 prominent Liberian citizens by a firing squad. The murder of 300 to 400 children in Nimba County. The Thomas G. Kuyampa saga. The Nimba raid. The murder of Brigadier General Robert G. Say in Zogowe, Nimba County, and D.K. Wanselie in Yekepa, Nimba County. I was also accredited to 17 of the many Liberian peace talks and played very key roles, either as head of the delegation or chief of negotiation representing the MPFL, and will be delighted to share some of the historical experiences for the benefit of your records and the Liberian people. G, Charles G. Taylor escaped from maximum security prison in the United States of America to Burkina Faso on to Ivory Coast, training programs in Libya, in the Libyan desert of Tagira, and finally surfacing at the Liberian border town of Butuo. H. Issues surrounding the emergence and creation of the IMPFL, ULIMO-K, ULIMO-J, LPC, LDF, AFL as a warring faction, and LORD and MODEL. I, the role of regional leaders such as RUF Fode Sanko, General Mosquito, General Issa, Gambian Special Forces and the leader Samba Sayang, Dr. Manning, Babu Zumaniga of Guinea, and Lassana Conte of Guinea. General Robert Gay of the Ivory Coast, Blaise Compaoré of Burkina Faso, Johnny Paul Nkrumah of Sierra Leone, and the ECOMOG Nigerian, Senegalese, and Ghanaian generals and colonels, their role and their involvement. Men in transitional government and over 20 political parties and a lot more. Mr. Director, as a consequence of the extensive, informative, and realistic and practical nature of my explanation to the inquiry unit, coupled with the broad-based political institution and constituency which I represent, this will have to be a live and radio television program. I also volunteer to assist the TRC in defraying part of the costs of the airtime and radio promos for the program. Well, I don't have to do that now because I'm certain the TRC has enough fund to carry out its work. I will commence first of all by extending my sincere gratitude and thanks and compliment to the members, the chiefs and the elders and the Zulus of Liberia, members of the traditional societies and the traditional leaders of our country who over the many years have assisted in maintaining peace, tranquility, and stability between and amongst our people. We remember during many years where the leaders, the traditional leaders of this country were involved in harmonizing and settling disputes and organizing and coordinating security at various levels of our society. We want to recognize them and to give them the due respect and the honor that is due them. Now it is a bit complicated to deal with these issues because I would first of all want to give my experience, but it's impossible for me to give you my experience without primarily telling you my role. I had to have played a role to have the level of experience that I have in the crisis. A real man is a man that is able and has the capacity and ability to dance by any tune. That is primary. We joined the revolution very early. Now the revolution in this country started as far back as the late 60s. A group of progressives returned from school abroad into this country and began a movement to educate the masses of our people to the social and economic, to the unfortunate social and economic conditions that prevail at the time. And it was at that time that most of us young people came from secondary schools or high schools and entered into the university. At the university, at the time, the university was a breeding ground for educating our brothers and sisters to the unfortunate economic conditions. The reason being that most of the progressives that came back to the country during that time were lecturers at the University of Liberia and Cottington University College. We participated very strongly in the initiation of multi-party democracy at the University of Liberia with Frederick Gobewole, contesting the election in the early 70s, and we participating. We also organized ourselves under the banner of the Movement for Justice in Africa, MOJA, where you had professors like Professor Vusmaki from South Africa, Nga Mashima from Mozambique, Dr. Tipote, Dr. Sawyer, Dr. Famule, Professor Du Twanre Mason. These were the people in the vanguard of the African liberation. Now, we want to, before we get into that, maybe most of that will come into the question and the answer period. Before we get into that, we would like to admonish the commissioners also, the commissioners of the TRC and the Liberian people. Fellow commissioners, what you do at this commission and how you do what you do here will go a long way in determining the destiny of Liberia, the land of our nativity, our heritage and pride. This glorious land of liberty must remain ours, and it must be free of oppression, free of suppression and indignation, now and forever. This is the kind of Liberia we envisage for ourselves and our children. My role was quite clear because I want to take my role now from 1990, and then later on we will go into details surrounding the 70s and our involvement in other things. But we joined the revolution in 1990 August. The revolution was quite a formidable one because most people, now before you get into the details, we'll find out that most people joined or took part in various warring groups or revolutionary groups because of their own desires. Now in 1990, we joined the revolution because of our desire to return home. As you may know, during the Samuel Doe regime, the latter part, after we're very close to the PRC government, we had to, for some reason of dislike or whatnot, we had to go into exile and lived in exile from 1985 up to 1990. Our desire to return home was burning, and we made some appeals to the government at the time under Samuel Doe, and he granted some sort of amnesty to me to return. We returned in early June 1990. At the time, the war was already on, and we already had knowledge of it. But as it happened, there was no discipline, there was no guide or protection in the war, and so it spilled over, and no one knew who was what at the time. But our desire to return and the oppressive regime of Samuel Doe was one of the key factors that encouraged us to support the revolution. Now, I'll give you a brief history of how it happened. We were caught up in the red light area after the MPFL attacked Painesville. And just to give you some of the scenario of the things that happened in Liberia and the cause of the crisis, the general attitude of individuals and how they responded to their people. When the MPFL fighters arrive in Painesville, remember, when they arrive in any town, the first group of people they come in contact with are members of the lumpen proletariat class. Let me explain that. The members of the lumpen proletariat class in society constitute hooligans, vagabonds, prostitutes, homeless wanderers, and vagrants. These are the people that are out in the street. When the guns are firing, most of the people go into their homes, and these are the only people that are out there and come in contact with the fighters, primarily. 2 days after Painesville was attacked, I was in my home, and there was beating on my gate. After the shooting, we had the gates locked, and there was beating on my gate. Who came into my gate? My houseboy came into my gate with about 5 or 6 armed men of the MPFL. Now, I'm saying this to say that if I was someone who was terrible or bad in the neighborhood or awful to my houseboy, I would have been a dead man and I wouldn't be here today. Most people in this country got killed or attacked, wounded or injured as a consequence of their own attitude and their interaction with their fellow men in their neighborhood. Many people can bear me out that some people died as a consequence of social problems. Some people died because they did not give people jobs and they walk up on them with guns. Some people died because of family disagreement, misunderstanding, misrepresentation, and a lot of misinformation. But be that as it may, these are some of the problems that are prevailing and still prevailing today in our society. These are the root cause of the problem: oppression, suppression, and indignation. Now, most of the time, you can see that the formation of warring factions depended on a lot of things. It depended on a group of people that were being pursued or that were being ousted out of the country or segregated against. They went out in their burning desire to return home. They organized themselves into warring groups to come and fight, not realizing the collateral damage to the citizenry and the population. After the coup in 1985, there was a very strong desire to wipe out the Congo or Americo-Liberians. This went on up until 1985. But today, the Congo people are still here. The Americo-Liberians are still here. After the Thomas Kurumpa coup in 1985, there was a strong desire to wipe out all the Guios and Manos. They tried to kill many of them, thousands of them. But today, the Guios and the Manos are still here. And they are still with us in one society and one nation. Another 5 years came out, a burning desire to kill all the crowns and Mandingos. The crowns are the consequence of Samedo attack on the Guios and Manos, as a consequence of Kurumpa attempted coup. And the Mandingos was a different scenario because of the desire to reclaim their lands in Lofa, Nimba, Bon County, and other counties where the Mandingos had settled, owned land, and owned properties. This desire came to eliminate them, not because of their involvement in the political sector, but because of greed for their land and their properties. The Mandingos are still here with us, playing a very active role as Liberian citizens and doing what they know how to do best. We are saying these things because there have been desire and quest all the time to eliminate one or the other group of people. And we find out that these people are still here with us and we are still together. Some individuals come in and say that the Americo-Liberians, I mean, no defense of that. I am, as you all know, my base is both. I cannot be on one side because I am a product of intermarriage, African native and Americo-Liberian. But I say this to say that history must record that there was never a time in the history of Liberia that there was one homogeneous society. Some people come in and give the misrepresentation or the misconception that our indigenous people were united when the settlers came in. There was no unity here. there were a series of wars, there were a series of kingdoms, and each king or chief of a tribe had his own kingdom. There was no unity, there was no homogeneity between and amongst the Liberian tribes prior to the coming of the settlers. That misconception, and some Liberian historians use this as a base to try to antagonize one group or another, giving the impression that there was collectivity or homogeneity before the settlers came. There was nothing of such. Now, my resume maybe might tell you the roles that I played in the revolution. When I got out of the refugee camps, I'll tell you what happened there before some people begin to think that I just dropped from the sky in the revolution. I was one of the individuals at the refugee camps in Fendo with my family. And the refugee camp was overrun several times by Prince Johnson, the second time by Mr. Taylor and his MPFL. And then, at the time that Mr. Taylor visited Fendo, we were all standing on line. And he saw me on the line and he said, "Oh, but man, what are you doing here?" And I said, "Oh yeah, I thought you were in exile." And I said, "Yes, I was, but I'm back here." He said, what are you doing? I said, "I'm displaced like everybody else." He said, "But you can't be here." And he instructed one of his commanders to organize a vehicle for me and a jeep, and took me with him when he went to Habel. When we arrived at Habel, I lived in his house for about a month with his family and my family. And there was a desire for my family to leave. They didn't like the atmosphere. There was too much shooting and gun running and all that. And so my family left, and I decided to stay. And I said to him one morning as we were sitting on the porch in Habel Hill drinking coffee, and I said to him, I said, "My dear brother, you've been fighting for almost 7 to 8 months now, but you have not declared a government. You have to form a government, a civilian administration, so that the people can get out there and tell the world about your objective. All they know that this is a rebel group that's going about from village to village, killing people and murdering people, and people are dying, and the international press is reporting what they want to report. You must now form a civilian administrative group that will cater to other aspects of the revolution. This is a revolution." He agreed with me, and on August 12, 1990, he formed the MPRAG government. Now, I would want to say something here that people should understand, that the Cotonou Accord recognized the fact that there were two governments in Liberia. No one should sit here and believe that the IGNU government in Monrovia was the only government in Liberia, and that those from the IGNU government have the right or authority to question the operation of the National Patriotic Reconstruction Assembly government. That was a government. That was a government of the majority of the people of this country, controlling over 90% of the country, controlling the natural, mineral, and human resources of the country, and functional as a government. At the time, I was at the early stages of it, I was very pleased with it, because at the time there was no acts of corruption, because they were killing people for doing nothing. So you could not even try to do anything to the contrary. At the time the government was set up, you had ministers, and many of them are still here today. Some of them are even working in the new government. Some of the ministers that were appointed by Mr. Taylor at the time. And the MPRAG operated fully as a government. There were 13 to 14 timber companies. There were rubber processing plants. The IO mining company was operating. The railway was running and shipping. The three ports, Hapo, Sino, and Buchanan ports, were fully functional. Most people would not understand that. Now you see that people have come in and have disbanded almost 12 to 13 timber companies that were operating at the time, claiming that they supported the MPFL. But some of the biggest taxpayer to the MPFL was Firestone and LAC. These companies are still operating under their concession. They have allowed them to operate because maybe of their nationality or their origin. But it must be clear to the Liberian people, and history must record, that Firestone was fully operational, shipping rubber and paying taxes to the MPRAG government. So was LAC. So was the Palm Bay company in Grand Bassa County. Besides that, there were many other timber companies and other companies operating in that area. So let people not believe that they are the clean ones, and those companies were the bad companies that were supporting. They had no option. If you are operating under the territory of a government, it is your responsibility and your duty to pay taxes to that government. It is the government's responsibility to use the taxes to the best interest of its citizenry. And I expect questions on that, but I have the adequate responses for that when they come up. Then when we joined the revolution, when I got to Buchanan after the government was formed, you may want to know some of the officials of that government. If the questions come up, we will give the individuals. You had, I can start, you had Samuel Doki as Minister of Internal Affairs. You had Tom Wowoyu, Minister of Defense. Toga McIntosh, Minister of Economic Planning. William E. Dennis, Minister of Finance. Leola Fleming was the Deputy Minister of Finance. You had a Legislative Assembly also with young representatives from various counties like the late Augustine Yinswa, Tia Faculty, Abel Masale, and some other young dynamic people who were in the transitional legislature. D. Muslin Cooper was the Minister of Education, and many others. I will name them as we go along on that. That was a fully operational government. I decided as a businessman, I was not interested in a government, in a portfolio or in an appointment. I was interested in business, as I've always been. And so I requested the permission of the government to mortgage my home in New Jersey, raise about $190,000 US dollars to purchase petroleum, because there was a shortage of petroleum product, and I decided to set up the National Hydrocarbon Corporation that eventually owned 93 gas stations, filling stations around the country, creating employment for over 3,000 Liberians in various counties and various areas in the country. Now, my objective I was not a philanthropist in this objective. I was in there to make money. We were fighting war, and I saw an avenue through which I could establish a petroleum supply corporation that would sell petroleum products to Firestone, to LAC, to 12 or 13 timber companies, and to also supply the MPRAG government for this operation and movement. Mind you, the MPRAG government was fighting a war, and they needed to be fueled and financed. The National Hydrocarbon Corporation grew into a giant multi-million-dollar conglomerate all over the country. And it took the shape of a quasi-government private public corporation, because we had to use most of the proceeds and the profits to ensure that there was sufficient petroleum products in Greater Liberia, as were called at the time. And so most of the profits and funding from there, on instructions of the government share, was used to purchase vehicles, trucks, pickups, and other materials necessary to continue the operation of the war. Now, the National Hydrocarbon Corporation catered to 12 timber companies, the NGOs, the MPRAG, the military command structure, the rubber companies, the port operation, Liminco, the operation of the train, and supplied a lot of logistics when it came to rice, when it came to food, sweatsuits and vehicles and all that. Now, my involvement also, my role also, I'm emphasizing on my roles now so that I can get to the next phase. My role continued as the representative of the MPFL to peace conferences. There were many other revolutionary meetings in Mali, Burkina Faso, Nigeria, Ivory Coast, Chad, Congo, and we represented, we sat on delegations and represented the MPFL. Also, my role continued, and I served and represented the MPFL at most of the forums, and I served in most of the transitional governments of which the MPFL participated. After the war came to an end and there was peace, some semblance of peace, the political environment was declared open, and I proceeded with the permission and the authority of the president at the time, Charles G. Taylor, to transform the MPFL, to transform the war machine into a mass-based political party. That was the function that I had, a major function that I had to undertake prior to the elections. Well, being a political scientist and someone who had been involved in political parties and political operation, it was very easy for me to do. It was easy for me to move around the 64 constituencies in the country, identify the military structure in those areas with permission, and transform them into civilian partisans. How did we do that? It was very easy. We changed their attire. We changed their attire from the military, quasi-military uniform to putting on T-shirts and face caps, sweatsuits and party canvas shoes and other things, and transfer people from one point to their region, their origin. If you were a lawman that was in Nimba County operating as a battalion commander, I suggested that you were transferred to Lofa County, where you'll be able to speak your language to your people and educate them to a new phenomenon, that the political era had come, and that all the damages that you have been doing to them as a soldier no longer exists, that you are now a party stalwart. It was easy to transform the war machine into a mass-based political party. And that is some of the things that most Liberians should look at as a plus. Because most people thought that it was just automatic, that everybody who supported the war or fought the war just became automatically a member of the MPP. That was not so, because it took lobbying, it took organization to go, and I as the campaign manager at the time had to go to the 64 constituencies. I can boast that I'm one of the only politicians in this country that have visited all 64 of the constituencies in this country, slept in that area, and worked overnight to ensure that I transform militants into partisans. And that is a very important aspect of our involvement and our participation in the revolution. In life, I say that you have a choice to live one day as a lion and take a decision or a position or a commitment, or to live your lifetime as a suppressed or oppressed lamb, where people will kick you from pillar to pole. I prefer to live one day as a lion than to be suppressed for the rest of my life. I take responsibility and full commitment for my involvement in the revolution. Whatever I did, when I joined the revolution, I was not a minor. I was not coerced or forced into it. I was in my 40s, and I was a rich man. I was not poor. I did not join the revolution for money. I already had money, and most Liberians here who are my colleagues and friends, most of them on the commission will tell you that before 1990, I had a lot of money. And I joined the revolution with my own determination. My own determination was to ensure that there was equality between Liberians. I knew that there was a lot of disparity, that there was suppression, and there was oppression and indignation. And the revolution had the objective of making sure that all Liberians participated fully in the decision-making process of the country and participated in government and governance and in the benefit of the proceeds of the natural resources of our country. That was the reason for which I supported the revolution. Whether it was the ultimate objective, whether that was it, that's what it ended up to, is another story, and I think at the discussion time you will respond to some of those issues. Now, what is important is that one day we will all die, and so we have to do all we can to improve the remaining brief periods of our lives. How do we do that? We must all be committed to the national development effort of our country. The scenario goes where many Liberians think that, and that is still going on today, And most people from the time that we were young, most people have a tendency to believe that I did not spoil this, so I should not fix it. When we're kids, you will leave a bucket somewhere and they will say, go and move that bucket. And you will say, I did not put it there, so I'm not going to move it. Now that's what has happened in Liberia today. The decadence in our society have been caused by such general attitude at the lower level. We grow up with this tendency, and Liberians have become more and more divided over the concept of I did not do it, so I do not have to fix it. Then we go to the subject matter that we are about to look at. The direct involvement of international groups in fueling the crisis. Most people might not know, and history have not recorded, that a lot of countries, the United States and other countries, were directly involved in fueling the crisis in Liberia. They supported, aided, and abetted the revolution in the beginning and continued to support it, provide advice, support, and all. They brought in Firestone and LAC. These were American companies. They were encouraged or supported by their governments or by influential members of their government, and they continued in Liberia operating under the pretext of protecting their plantations or their assets, but they were working and making sure that they were still shipping rubber to Akron, Ohio to support the 70 or 80,000 workers they have at the rubber processing plant there. Groups and countries, concessions were all involved in that, and individuals also have had personal interests. Those people who had personal interests for whatever reasons they had did come in and did support the revolution to every extent. No one should now play that they are clean and they were not part of it. They were only there through their surrogates or whatever. All of these countries and companies and concessions played very major role in fueling the crisis in Liberia, because what they wanted was for the MPFL to continue to operate and hold those territories so that they can operate freely and carry out their business. In doing that, they were supportive of whatever was going on, and even at the time, certain times when there were conferences and they did not feel comfortable that the country should be united under one umbrella, they would say, let the peace talk break down. And many peace talks broke down because of selfish interests of some of these multinational corporations. The genesis of Moja PAL, I said that most Liberians have been involved in this. Moja was a revolutionary movement that was involved in educating Liberians to the unfortunate social and economic conditions. PAL was another organization in the United States. There were various youth movements in Liberia, student council governments from the University of Liberia and Cottington College, workers' union and other pressure groups and individuals who encouraged demonstrations, who rose up against government. There was demonstration all the time in the country against the prevailing regime at the time. These are some of the facets, the riots, the strikes, the civil commotion. All these things led to the revolutionary coup d'etat that happened in 1980. It might impress you also to note that there was no time, and history has to record that. If you're going to put Liberian history together, you have to put it together correctly. There was never a time that the 17 members of the PRC, Samuel Doe and his group, sat down in no room to plan a coup d'etat. They did not have the knowledge, they did not have the experience, they did not have the exposure and the wit to even do that after this thing happened, and we kept in contact with them. I was very close to Samuel Doe and very close to most of the members of the PRC. No one can tell me anything. I was there physically. There was never a time, and I asked this question over and over, how did you guys organize and plan this thing here? Harrison Penny was the first to meet President William Aratobo's door ajar and peeped in and saw the president lying down dead. And history got to record that. They never had no coup. They never organized themselves as a group of people to go and shoot the president. The president of Liberia, William Aratobo, was murdered on the night that he left from the Baptist Convention. There were security reports in 1980 that there was an attempt to overthrow the government and to eliminate the president. That's why when he left the Baptist Convention, he did not go to Fendo, where he should have been. That was the plan. The plan was to eliminate him in Fendo, and then Lieutenant Colonel Jebo and others that were trained by the U.S. military mission would march from Shuffling and come down to Monrovia and take over the executive mansion. That did not work. President Toba left from the Baptist Convention and went to the executive mansion. But there was also a plot there that if he was there, he was going to get killed, and he was killed there. Our president was murdered by foreigners in our country, and history must record that. People must stop thinking that a group of uneducated enlisted men in the armed forces of Liberia planned a coup d'etat and overthrew the government and killed the president. That was not the case. And no member of the PRC, whether alive now, can stand up and tell you that they had any prior meetings together as a homogeneous group to organize a coup d'etat or to kill the president and take over. It was unfortunate for the planners of the coup that it was discovered that the president was killed prior to the time that the men that they had positioned with new uniforms and all to come over and take the executive mansion. That's why when Samuel Doe, after a few days of the coup, d'etat, after a few days, Samuel Doe began to chase Lieutenant Colonel Jebo, and he was wanted dead or alive because the same people who planned the coup, who planned the murder of Torbert, had already informed some of the security members and members of the body that was trained, because after Doe and others took over, this group dispersed. And most of them were on the run. Some of them were middle-level military officers who took positions and was hoping that they would be appointed into government and to get jobs and continue their lives because their own procedure had failed and maybe plan again. Most of them disclosed to their tribesmen and other people that this attempt was on. Therefore, Samuel Doe began to pursue Jebo and finally killed him while he was crossing the river. So let no history record that a group of enlisted men in the army organized a coup. They did not organize a coup. They took advantage of a situation. That was the reason for the crude manner in which the takeover came about. How can you say you plan a coup and all 17 of you will get in two cars and drive from the mansion to EFBC and all of you are standing on top of the table in EFBC announcing and quarreling among yourselves and whatnot? That's no group of people that could organize a coup. There was nothing of that nature. And history has to record it as it is. These pressure groups and other groups, after these enlisted men took over the country, there began an atmosphere of division and segregation. We were close to them, as I said, and you could see that most of the progressives, the guys you see today, the guys you see that form all these warring factions in this country are all members of one group of progressives. And I would like to say here that we keep blaming one or two people for all this crisis and all this problem in the country. I would say a generation prior, the Amos Sawyer and Tipote and Famula generation, one generation over us, the younger generation, these were the leaders of the progressive movement. And you can see that over the years, every one of them, each of them have been involved in the creation or the formation of a warring faction or a political party because of their burning desire for government, for national leadership, or for positions in government. Everyone come in and say, we are going to do better. The same thing, Charles Taylor was here Lord and Model said they would do better. They came in and stole all the people money. Today, they're running behind them. Taylor told them that rat trap is not for rat alone. Y'all say the government was corrupt. Y'all went and fought war, killed a whole lot of people, brought one government, y'all installed the government that even formed the TRC here, the Ghana Accord. They came in, they looted the coffers of the country. Today they carry them to court, and some of them are arguing where they carrying out to court for. But the people saw y'all taking their money. Now, this group of progressive you see, along with our generation, I've said over and over, and I repeated this at the All Liberia conference some time ago. If our generation do not do what we should do, if we do not repair this country and fix it, if we do not organize ourselves in a homogeneous group and do well for the citizens of the younger generation of this country, our generation will go down in history as the most destructive generation of all times. The reason is very clear. We had the advantage of education. We had the advantage of peace and harmony and tranquility. We had the Peace Corps volunteers. We had the U.S. Educational Foundation. We had the Fulbright Foundation. We had professors from all walks of life educating us during our time. We had the best quality education. Yet, after we received our education and our qualification, we came back to the country with a burning desire for national leadership and to get jobs till we destroy the entire lives of the younger generation of people today. And our generation of men and women are still occupying government positions. They are still lobbying for government jobs. They are still undermining government. They are still lying and carrying misrepresentation and misinformation about to lead us in our country. This generation is very destructive. We have destroyed the future of the young generation, and we are sitting up in Liberia and calling ourselves the clean ones. We have destroyed the fabric of our society because of our burning desire for national leadership, government jobs, and government offices. We did not spare any moment in making sure that any level of destruction occurred, that any level of damage occurred in our desires to be where we are today. This is very unfair to the young generation, and as all of them sit out there, we have a responsibility to ensure that the quality of their lives are improved. We cannot come and sit here and say, we are the clean ones. Those were the dirty ones. But the lives of the people are of cardinal importance. This generation must have hope. And it's only us and the generation before us that can create the level of hope that the younger generation need to improve the quality of their lives and to go ahead. We should not be misled that anyone in the younger generation believe that we are the proper messiahs. We were the proper destroyers that destroy the generation, that destroy the lives of our children. That's why I said that suppression, oppression, and indignation in our country should be out of the face, because that is the kind of Liberia we should envisage for ourselves and our children. Now, I've emphasized the point. Now, coming back to the issue of the murder of Samuel Doe. Our President Samuel Doe was also murdered. And it's amazing to me that Liberians maybe put a lot of priority on this government, but you see a lot of people in there who are responsible for these actions. And you have seen television and photographs of individuals physically murdering the president, duly elected president of this country. And people do not look at it as anything serious. They take it as a joke or take it as something to play with. These are some of the things that continue to cause the trouble in our country. No one is going to, no tribe or no group is going to tolerate that level of indiscipline, that level of disgrace and humiliation that was carried out, and people are still vacillating around in the country. They are not apologetic and they are not sympathetic to that cause. Some of them are claiming to be heroes as a consequence of such unwholesome acts in our times. Let us take note of these things. The idea of the TRC, I think, should be that the injured parties, the citizens and civilians who were injured in this crisis, should come and express the level of hurt and injury they have had, and people should be requested to come in and mend those fences. The TRC is not a place to invite warlords. Warlords go to a war crime tribunal. I see why TRC inviting warlords. I mean, that's not the forum for that. There's nobody that will tell you there's nowhere in the world that warlords are invited to a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. But that is the situation in Liberia. We respect that, we support that, and we honor it. But that should not be. Our situation continue when one group of people have a tendency to go into other counties and other towns and villages and murder other people. Now look at what happened at the end of the Coup saga. A group of military men under the orders or without orders maybe were required to go to Nimba County and see what is happening there, or to check the security situation. But you know what happens in this country? There are a lot of overzealous elements that claim to represent the leadership of parties or groups. These overzealous elements have been responsible for the degradation in our country. They ask you to go and arrest someone. You get there, instead of arresting the man, you start beating him, beating his children, beating his family, insulting his wife, and beating his neighbors. This overzealous attitude of Liberians in responding to national problem and crisis have created a lot of pandemonium in our country and created a lot of hurt and distrust. That is why it is difficult to reconcile us today. Some generals from the Liberian army, some of them still alive today and still trying to overthrow and kill people and take government. They went to Nimba County and kill up people and children. They went up there, they murdered General Robert Gonganuse in Zogowi. D.K. Wonselier, a civilian administrator in Yekepa working as administrative manager, was also murdered because of his tribe. He had nothing to do with Kurumba and his coup. He was way up in Yekepa. But some overzealous elements left this town and went to Nimba and murdered the Nimba people, murdered Wonselier, and murdered many others. What happened? Desperate, destroyed, and discontent, the Nimba people organized themselves, went into exile and organized themselves, and looking for leadership, organized themselves to come back and revenge. That's what created a problem. And you could not blame them for that. You see people murdering your children, murdering your mothers and fathers in the villages, and going on a rampage because they have guns. You go back, organize yourself, and come back and try to eliminate them too. But no one has succeeded in this process. You go, you organize yourself as a warring faction, you come, you go into one county, you kill up a few people, there's a peace conference, you go sit on the table, they give you a few jobs, you have a few jobs, you begin to steal the government money and live off it, and you forget about the revolution that you started. That's what has prevailed in our country and still prevailing. Then another aspect that have created problem is that nobody can tell you. For example, many people mention the murder of David Dwyer, David Twe, Jackson Doe. These people were murdered by people of Nimba County. There was nobody at the time, even Charles Taylor, I can tell you in 1990, there was nobody in this country, even Charles Taylor with all his command and his command structure, could order the execution or the killing of anybody from Nimba County. The only people that could kill people from Nimba County were people from Nimba County. All their leaders, Jackson Doe, David Twe, David Dwyer, all of them were killed by whom? People from Nimba County who felt that these people aligned themselves with the Americo-Liberians in Monrovia and did not do much for the people of Nimba County. Between and among themselves, even the special forces that trained in Tajira, in Libya, 100 and something of them. They came back to Liberia, and believe me, most of you may not know, and the history must record that. Each of these special forces at the time was a separate and distinct army. Each of them was a separate army. I was with them. Each of them represented a separate and distinct army. None of them had less than 200 to 300 bodyguards, fully armed with submachine guns, anti-aircraft guns, and everything. And if one of them had a quarrel, if two of them had a quarrel in Kakata, the other one will leave Kakata and go to Nimba County and beat up the people in the villages of the other and kill up some people. That's what was happening. So there was no way that even Mr. Taylor could order the execution of any of these people. And furthermore, he had no beef with Jackson Doe and them. He was looking for them. He had sent, at one time, I think the Americans had convinced him to bring in Gray Allison to help him with the military thing. And he sent for Gray Allison. What happened? Gray Allison never reached to him. Stephen Yekison, he sent me to go and get Stephen Yekison. I went to Banga, he said, look, when you get to, I said, oh, Dr. Yekison is in Banga, you're looking for somebody to come to Coddington and organize this place. He said, no, I want somebody to be the Minister of Education. I will let Demos organize Coddington. But I don't want to appoint anybody without talking to them first. So when you get there, ask Dr. Yekison, bring him up to me, let me talk to him first and see. Some of these people are not interested in what we are doing. They want to find their way out. So if he wants to go out, he can go on. If he wants to work, he can come in and we'll nominate him to help us. Dr. Yekison was living very well in Buchanan. Most of the university students were going to him. The girls were frying donuts and colors and things and taking it to Dr. Yekison. He was all right. But once this idea came that Taylor wanted to make him something and to be somebody, they mistook him to be the president at the University of Liberia who was killed, who were there when Doe ordered the killing of other people. And Dr. Yekison was not the president at the time. But the misunderstanding and misinformation of people led to the murder of this poor man for nothing. And he never reached. So by the time I came back from Banga, I slept at Kari that night at Tom Woju's place. When I got back to Buchanan the next morning and went to Dr. Yekison's house, he was not there. The house was looted. When I was reversing out of the gate, and a lady said to me, oh, you looking for the doctor? And I said, yes. She said, he's on the beach. And I walked to the beach. As I approached the beach, I said, well, how could Stephen be laying down here in the sun? The water splashing on him. When I went there, there was a bullet in his head. He was dead. When I called Taylor and told him, he said, my brother, these guys are going to embarrass me. Now, this is the type of thing that happened in the country. Brothers were killing brothers. Because you and somebody had a disagreement over a lady, you would go to his place and shoot him up and shoot his people. Because there was a disagreement for a vehicle. Simple things like someone looted a car and someone else went and took it from him, led to him going to another man's village and kill up the people. So Liberians, this attitude must change, where we are overzealous in our attitude. The overzealousness of our people is the root cause of our problem. I will give you a typical example of something that happened to me. It's good for us to give these examples for posterity. And I'm jumping because it's ahead, but it is important to bring it forward now that I'm talking about this kind of overzealous attitude of individuals. And that's how many people got killed in the country. At one time, there was a serious disagreement between me as party chairman and the standard bearer of the party who was the president. And everyone know about that. Because I was disgusted over the attitude of the level of corruption between and among my friends and ministers in government. And I spoke out strongly about it. And I said, I addressed two issues. At that time, the war was raging. And I said, we have 100% of the government. I know that those people who are fighting over there with Lloyd and Modell are fighting for jobs. So it is important for our government to call them and offer them jobs. And I suggested 6 cabinet positions, 12 deputy ministerial positions, 2 or 3 public corporations, and other assistant ministerial positions if they had the quality of human resources to occupy these jobs. Let them come home and work together with us as a government. That suggestion didn't go down well. Then I suggested again that those cabinet, I named 25 areas in government where there were high level of corruption. Some of them were my very good and personal friends. But I mentioned that because I was inside and I knew what was going on. Then I had disagreement with the standard bearer and president at the time, and I was placed on house arrest. While on house arrest, after about two or three weeks, because what was happening is that there was frustration because all the ministers and friends of mine at the end of the work would come to my house, and I was partying every day. I had no work to do. I was organizing parties, emergency parties, and people were partying all day, roasting meat and eating because I wasn't working. I was at home. I was under house arrest, and all the friends would come to me, and apparently there was a little bit of envy, and so the president said to me one day on the telephone, he said, "Oh, I hear that all my ministers come to your house all day and they sit down there while you are there." I said, "My man, but you tell your minister they're not to come." I didn't call them. They want to come and have a nice time here with me. I'm on a house arrest. They are welcome, but if you stop them, they might not come. Anyway, one day I was at home about 6 o'clock in the evening, and the 3 SSS officers came in an SSS Jeep, and they said to me, "Chief, you always take care of us and you look after us. We all like you. The kind of things we're hearing now is very serious, so we came to carry you out of the country." I said, "Me?" They said, "Yes, we came to take you away. We got the SSG with their pass and get to Logwatu, and then you can go where you are going." And I said, "What?" I said, "I'm not going nowhere." I said, "Because I know y'all. I've been with y'all from 1990. I know y'all good because I'll follow y'all from here to Logwatu." I told her, I said, "Look, gentlemen, I'm not going anywhere. I respect what y'all say. Y'all thank you, but I cannot leave my house where I secure here and jump in one Jeep side running away. To go where?" Anyway, I was concerned. So I picked up the telephone and I called my friend. I said, "Mr. President, look, if you want to do anything to me, send for me or do it to me, let me know. Because I know me and you have never planned to kill anybody. Me and you have never planned to destroy anybody from the time we've been working together. And if that is the case, please let me know. Or send for me, I'll come to you. But nobody will come for me." He said, "What happened?" I told him, "These guys are here," and he told me that. He said, "Okay, let them stay there. We'll keep them for a while, and I will deal with that matter just now." And I told him, I said, "Gentlemen, I'm getting ready. Y'all sit down a little bit. I'll come and get ready. Let me pack my things so that we can leave." After a while, Benjamin Yeten came with an SSS Jeep, and he collected them, and he arrested them and carried them. And the result of that was very clear. I don't know what happened, but I saw them later on, and they were not happy with me, but I was happy with myself because I was alive, and my children were happy because their father was alive, and my relatives were happy because I was alive. But I said that to say that this is how many people died in this country. Overzealous attitude of people. As soon as, even in their country now today, they tell somebody, say, "Oh, my man, I cannot deal with you. The president vexed with you." Even right now in the country, certain businesses do not prosper or foster because the people believe that the president of the country do not like that person. Overzealous nature of Liberians is one of the key cause of the problems that we're having in this country. You want to overact. They tell you it happened a lot of times even during the Taylor administration. I think one of the typical examples of that was the issue of Samuel Doki. I remember very well when we were on our way to Tripoli in the aircraft, when President Taylor said to a SSS director, he said, "Make sure you go to Nimba and get your brother Doki." They said they arrested him at the police station. "Make sure you go and get your brother Doki, because if anything happened to him, they will say I'm responsible." I was in the aircraft with him sitting in the first class cabin when he gave that instruction. We were in Tripoli when they called President Taylor to say that Doki was killed. Now Liberian people believe that he has something to do with Doki's death. For what? Who are Doki? I hear yesterday Moses Black King say Taylor ordered his execution. Moses Black was just a little toy in the MPFL. He was nothing much. He was just a little toy. He said he used to salute me. He had to salute me. He was a little toy. So when he came here, to get what? Taylor was not in the habit. I'm not defending him. It's not my duty. He will come here and defend himself if he has to. But I'm saying things that happen, and let's be practical and real about these things. There were no such orders given. People acted on their own, with their own attitudes. Overzealous nature of people, even right in this government today, is happening right here. people lying on people, misinforming the government and the president about individuals that could help the country, people that could make some contribution to the development effort of the country, help people with some scholarship and other things. They are being pushed aside. Even right on the commission here, they're trying to ostracize some of the members because they feel that they believe certain things. Work together, love each other, and be homogeneous in your work, and you will get better results. Unity is strength. We are divided. Liberia been divided like this ever since. You had the Dengola chiefs, you had the Zama, the Basso chief, you had all these tribes were fighting among themselves furiously before even the settlers came. There was no way for the settlers did not meet a homogeneous group of people on this ground. People should stop misrepresenting things and misleading people about history of this country. There was never harmony or unity in this country before the coming of the settlers, and even till now, there's still a lot of disunity and disharmony between and among us because of our own personal greedy desires. Tribesmen hating tribesmen. Tribesmen killing their own the members of their own tribe for selfish reasons. Everybody wants to be the man in this tribe. That was the issue during the war. Everybody from Nimba wanted to be the man. I'm the man. These people from Nimba did not do anything for us, so they have no reason to live. Even when they kill people, and they allege or they say somebody, so and so person was responsible for the death of David Twe. They say take them to a tribunal. You go to a tribunal, there were no tribunal meeting. In fact, certain one of them were promoted even from the rank of brigadier general to major general to be able to try some of the special forces that they said had murdered their colleagues. They'll go to this meeting and say, who coming to kill these young people because of the old people from Nimba who didn't do anything for us? That level of mistrust and dishonesty led to serious division in our country, and that's what's causing trouble today. Today, you want to bring one group of people or one man for all the problem in Liberia. We don't have to defend anyone, but you all know that the problem in Liberia is still prevailing. Even though there is peace, even though there's election, there is still that division prevailing, distrust, mistrust, and disharmony prevailing.